Hello and welcome to the Educator's Edge. The goal of the podcast is to help you to teach smarter, lead brighter, and grow stronger. Hello, I'm Lisa Ellum, your go-to guide, your learning bestie, here to help you craft the art and learn the science of adult education in a way that's practical, it's insightful, and empowering. So, whether you're building your own teaching business, boosting your confidence to teach, or mastering the craft, you're in the right place. So let's dive into podcast number 13. And I've called this podcast, Is Sharing the Knowledge Enough? So the purpose behind this is to rethink the meaning of what it means to teach adult learners. Now, most learning institutions, be it universities, vet sectors, or in the workplace, we pride ourselves on producing and disseminating knowledge. But when it comes to the actual teaching of the knowledge to adult learners, how much value is placed on how we teach, not just what we teach? Yeah. So the question here comes from my experience in university, teaching in universities. And sure, you need a PhD or a master's or at least a bachelor to work in the university, but you don't require any teaching qualifications, which brings to question, in the education situation, is teaching valued? It's interesting. I think this is a really uncomfortable truth because in many universities, having this education qualification is not a requirement to teach. You can hold a doctorate in your discipline, secure a position as a lecturer, and be given a room full of students without ever having studied the art and science of adult learning. This raises a critical question. Is there an unspoken belief that teaching adults is simply about delivering content? And so we're overlooking something fundamental. We're overlooking the learner. So is it content or is it connection? Many experts believe that deep subject knowledge equals good teaching. However, content expertise, pedagogical expertise are not the same thing. Knowing what to teach does not automatically translate into knowing how to reach learners, how to spark curiosity, how to scaffold their knowledge building, how to create a safe place for meaning making. Adult learners bring that lived experience into the classroom. They have prior knowledge, they have responsibilities and expectations. They are not empty vessels. They are critical thinkers. They are problem solvers and sometimes skeptics. Engaging adult learners effectively, therefore, requires more than just lectures and PowerPoint slides. It requires a nuanced understanding of adult learning principles like intrinsic motivation, relevance, autonomy, and reflective practices, transformative reflections. So let's be clear. In these institutions, we are teaching adults. Even the language we use reveals a blind spot. Pedagogy. Have you heard the term? Have you used the term? Do you use it as a reflection of how you teach, the practices that you instill? Pedagogy is still widely used in adult education. Did you know it originates from the Greek word palagothia, goria? I'm really no good with my Greek. But it means to lead the child. So it's when we talk about pedagogy, we're talking about teacher-led direction, teaching, but it's about leading the child. So while the term has evolved, and there is a place for some pedagogy in our practice as adult learning practitioners, the term itself is rooted and assumptions are anchored in childhood education. But we are working with adults. We need more than pedagogy. So what are some of the other terms that we use? Have you heard of andragogy? I'm sure most of you have. And it comes as an approach to teaching adult learners. It's not a theory. It talks about an art and science of helping adults learn. Andragogy was popularized by Malcolm Knowles in the 1970s, recognizing that adult learners can be self-directed, experience rich in nature. We've got a background as adults. We've got wounds, we've got successes, we've got expectations. And now, today, we've got more godgies evolving. The one I find particularly interesting at the moment is heutagogy, which is learning theory focused on self-determined learning, where the learner is not just a participant, but they're the designer of their own learning journey. Heutagogy reflects the complexity and fluidity of modern adult education, especially in our digital and work integrated learning contexts. I guess knowing the definitions and the terms doesn't really matter, but understanding that there are more ways to teach adults than to lead the child. Yeah. The essential framework for understanding how adults learn is quite complex. And yet many universities still default to this one-size-fits-all content first model. And I believe that goes for vet sectors too. I've spent over 10 years working in the vet sector. And yeah, I believe their approach is a one-size-fits-all as well. And you see it in the workplace as well, especially as, small businesses are being overtaken by big businesses. So as long as we can get, an AI-generated education platform for our adult learners to tick that box, I don't know, are we really serving the adult learner? It brings me to the question of why is the science of adult learning so undervalued? And I believe it is. I'll tell you a story of a lady I worked with in a university a few years ago. She was a brilliant nurse and nurse practitioner. She had so much knowledge, she had so much compassion, she had so much empathy. But when she stood in front of the classroom, I don't know whether it was nerves or whether it was her previous experience of being taught, she became this overarching, I don't know, she was a bit mean in how she taught, and she really belittled students, trying to develop relationships with them, but she was it was a disaster. It really wasn't good. It wasn't good for the students, but it wasn't good for this teacher. And as a result, she's no longer teaching, which to me seems like a real loss for the university because of her expertise and her knowledge. All we needed to do as a university, as an employer, was to support her education, support her to learn how to teach, not just assume because she had the knowledge that she can transfer it easily. There is, I believe, there's a process to learning the art and science of adult education. So these approaches to adult learning have been happening for decades. Let's face it. You know, our whole university system in Australia really started from the apprentice, master and servant model that, the vet sector has taken on. But our universities operated the same way, very, very vocational in spirit. And yeah, I feel like the body of research into adult learning is often ignored, and it's sidelined by and in academic institutions, especially in disciplines where being the expert is often synonymous with being the educator. Why does this disconnect persist in this day and age? Perhaps it is because the adult learning theory is still seen as a soft area, something educators can pick up along the way. Or maybe it's because research output remains a higher institution, the higher institutional priority than teaching quality or quality teaching. But ask any student who struggles through a poorly facilitated lecture. Good teaching is not a luxury, it is a necessity. So what needs to change? If we genuinely want to meet the needs of modern adult learners, we need a whole paradigm shift. We must stop assuming that subject knowledge alone makes someone a good educator. And we need to support those people with that subject knowledge to being effective and collaborative leaders. We need to professionalise teaching in higher education, not just as a compliance requirement, but as a commitment to quality. We must bring the science of adult learning to the forefront of academic practice, not tucked away in the education faculty, but actually embedded across the disciplines. So it's time for us to think. It's time for us to act. So your call to action is to start asking better questions. How do we prepare academics to engage adult learners meaningfully? How do we prepare teachers to engage adult learners meaningfully? How do we build capacity for effective facilitation and not just content delivery? How do we reframe teaching that is both intellectual and relational? Because ultimately, education is about what we know. It's also about how we invite others into that knowing. And that takes more than expertise. It takes science, it takes art, and it takes practice. It takes andragogy, heutagogy, and a genuine commitment to adult learners. So I'd love to know what you think. How does that impact you? Have you any questions? Have you any experiences, either as an adult learner or as a teacher of adults? Let me know. Send me an email, leave me a comment and let me know. Thank you for joining me. and have a really wonderful, wonderful week.